It's a story that comes down to one phrase: understanding my real value. This is a girl who didn't understand what she was worth. Does anybody have a friend who fits into that category? They're really beautiful, they just don't think so. They're really talented, they just don't think so. They look in the mirror and see fat, and you look at them and see beauty. They look in the mirror and see stupid. You look at them and see somebody who has incredible talents and abilities, but is hampered by what they think. More than any other time in our history, people are dissatisfied with what they see when they look in the mirror. I think part of it has to do with some of those viral YouTubes you've seen about the way they change models. You've all seen those, right? The way they literally will move her eyes. I mean, they will just change anything about the person to make the ad. And then when you're seeing the ad, you're not seeing the real person, you're seeing an idealized version. You know what's interesting? The model themselves feel badly when they look at that. Because what does it say about you if they have to like move your eyes? They must not think they're in the right place. If psychologists are correct, millions of people look into the mirror daily and they don't see clearly the person that's staring back at them. They see an image that they do not value, and they see somebody who's too thin, too large, too small. Can we just all agree we all have stuff sticking out in the wrong place and we don't have it sticking out where we want it? If we could all just agree on that, nobody's happy. Nobody's happy. And the people that are 100% happy, they're arrogant. We don't like them. So the Bible stands in contrast to that. And really the message of chapter 29 is that you can't really grasp who you are by gauging it as the reaction of other people. Some of you are patterned to see your worth based on how other people treat you. Okay, I want you to, this is serious now. I want you to tell me the truth. Did you or did you not, going through high school, know that there were some guys or girls that were above you, some below you, and some on your level? Did you know them? Do you know that there were some of you going, yeah, he would never look at me? And others would go, yeah, he could look at me, but I'm walking away really quickly. There are some people whose lunch table you could sit at and feel like you belonged, but other people you thought you weren't good enough for. Is everybody with me, or am I the only person who lived through this phenomenon? Okay, this side seems to be with me, this side seems to disbelieve what I'm saying. Homeschool, that'll do. You know, when you look around your homeschool and you see your little brother, you realize this illustration died on the vine. Okay. All right, look. Listen to this key principle. See if this key principle catches you. When I find my significance in God and His goodness, I find peace. When I find my significance in God and His goodness, I find peace. When I search for my significance in other people, in what I can do to win them, I find frustration and sorrow. If you try to figure out who you are based on how other people feel about you, you are going to fight a battle that you can't win. Somebody actually can manipulate you just by not being happy with you. Now, I don't know you well yet. It's early in the year. But in a group of this size, some of you are people pleasers. And some of you are not. You totally don't care if everybody else is happy, you're just doing what you're doing. But some of you are people pleasers. I want to come back and I want to look at 4 players in a story of Leah. But in order to get the story, you got to look at the other players in the story. You can't just look at her. So first, player number 1, we're going to say is Jacob, and he's in 29, 1-15. So I would mark next to 1, Jacob, 29, 1-15. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the sons of the east. He looked and he saw a well in the field. Behold, 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it. For from that well they watered the flocks. Now the stone on the mouth of the well was large. Stop right there. Why do you put a stone on top of a well?
Keep stuff out of it?
It is to keep stuff out of it. The only real filtration system you have in the ancient world is darkness. If it doesn't see light, it doesn't grow green stuff in it. So you keep a well cap on the well, you take it off, draw the water out of it, and put the well cap back on. But the problem is well caps have to be affixed pretty hard, or the wild animals that are around will push it off. So it's got to be a hefty thing that an ibex goat can't push off. Now, it says that when all the flocks gather there, they would then roll the stone from the mouth of the well and the water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where are you from?" And they said, "We are from Haran." And he said, "Do you know Laban the son of Nahor?" They said, "We know him." And he said to them, "Is it well with him?" And they said, "It is well. And here is Rachel, his daughter, coming with the sheep." He said, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered. Water the sheep and go and pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered and they roll the stone from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came from her father's sheep. She came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Then Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice. Now, don't do what you think. This is not Hollywood. He leapt over all the sheep, grabbed her, threw her in her arms, and it meant he gave a greeting, "Peace be unto you," and did the normal kiss. That was it. It was all on the up and up here. It's not romance, it's saying hello. Then Jacob told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. So when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Then he related to Laban all these things. Laban said to him, "Surely you are bone and of my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages will be." Now, I want you to understand something about the story. The trickster twin of Esau is the younger son who has been manipulating his father, lying to his brother, tricking his brother. He's the mama's boy, but he's this one who came part way on the journey and met the Lord. So this is Jacob 2, the sequel. Jacob 1 was lost Jacob. Now he's had an experience with God. His head on a stone and a vision of the stairway to heaven. So I want you to see that there's a new start going on here. Jacob is ready to industriously serve Laban before he gets a salary offer. That's not the Jacob we know from his early life. Jacob wasn't much of a flock guy, remember? Jacob wasn't an outdoorsman, remember? That was Esau. Jacob was the indoor decorator and cook. You want him to cook the animal? That's fine. You want him to watch the animal? He doesn't do watch. So this is a new pattern for Jacob. Look, his newfound faith and his newfound attachment to the family was part of the new start of his life. He was ready to go out in the field and work because he got a new start. Now, sometimes what we need more than anything else is a new start. When we got to get out of the rut we've been in. But the change in his walk with God started real changes in his walk with others. And that's the point of the first 15 verses. The change in his walk with God from 28 began a change in his walk with others. Jacob stopped trying to trick others because now he had a relationship with God. So what's important in the story is he starts off without a relationship with God, he meets God, and coming out of it, he's a different guy.
Just caught me. They mentioned she's a shepherdess.
Yes.
Is that like the only place like a woman's given an occupation?
No. No, there are quite a few occupations that women have. And if you look in Proverbs 31, she actually does quite a bit. Okay. There's a legal status for women that does not allow them to transfer property without a male heir. But if she has a male heir, she can buy, she can sell, she can own ships, she can own a shipping company, she can be the president of a corporation for all practical purpose, as long as she has a son somewhere that can sign off, or even a son who can't but has a foot that they can put a picture of. I mean, that's it. They all they need is an ink somewhere. Okay, now, here's the interesting thing. Jacob is in the grip of change. But you go to 29:15, and here's the second player. He's Laban. Now, if you think Jacob is a trickster, Laban is a wheeling, dealing, used camel salesman. This guy makes Jacob look stupid when it comes to wheeling and dealing. Jacob grew up manipulating and tricking. Laban was smarter than him at doing it. So now you get to Laban, and it says in 29:15, Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages be." Now, as the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's mom, he carried some of the same deceptive traits as his sister did. Rebekah wasn't the only one in the family that knew how to manipulate. Laban was a world-class manipulator. And here's what I want you to see. When you are a manipulator, you can be out-manipulated by somebody better. Now, he gets involved with Laban, and remember, Rebekah had no problem cheating the family and playing favorites and creating rivalries, but neither did Laban. He's going to do the same thing right out of the playbook of his sister. Like his sister, Laban was untrustworthy. And it's interesting, he will cheat Jacob on his paycheck 10 times. Mark next to verse 15, Genesis 31, 4 through 7. Genesis 31, 4 through 7. Let me jump to Genesis 31 and just read you a quick little shot just so you have an appreciation for Laban. It says, "So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to his flock in the field and said to them, 'I see your father's attitude, that it is not friendly toward me as it was formerly, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. However, God did not allow him to hurt me.'" What kind of guy is Laban? He is a slime ball when it comes to sign any contract you want with him, he's not going to fulfill it. So I want you to understand, Jacob is in the grip of change because God has just gotten a hold of his life. Laban is in the middle of manipulating people. He'll make any agreement with you he wants to make, but he's not going to keep it. He's going to change it. Manipulative people use questions to move a conversation forward, but have no intention of letting the answer stand in the way of what they want. So he asks the question, "Tell me, what shall your wages be?" And then he's not going to listen to the answer. He's going to change it to be whatever he wants them to be. Now stop for a moment and look at another irony of this lesson. Even in a new start, Jacob carries with him an old self. So Jacob is a new guy, but he's got an old self. Jacob's earlier life was characterized by cheating. He cheated his brother, he cheated his father, but now he's following God, right? But the lessons that Jacob needed to learn were not easy ones. He had to get them through experience. God put him right there with the used camel salesman of the year to trick him so that he could learn what it meant to feel like Esau, whom he has already tricked. Sometimes God has to take you through being the receiver of what you've done to somebody else so all of a sudden you can feel it. The disciples were with Jesus and they were heading for vacation. And in John 6, it says that they went around the lake and they were looking for some time off. And when they got there, the people had walked around and they got there with them. And the disciples saw a crowd and went, ugh. And Jesus saw a crowd and saw them as sheep without a shepherd. So he said to the boys, serve them lunch. And the disciples said, fine, I will take this basket and I will serve them this fish and this bread. It's fine with me. And then at the end, they ended up with baskets full, one for each of them. And they came back and they set those baskets down with attitude. We were tired. We wanted a break, and what we got is more ministry. And Jesus said, why don't you guys get in the boat and you head back and I'll meet up with you. I'm going to pray. He goes up on the mountain and prays. And as they get out there in the water, the boat begins to rock and they begin to panic. Jesus recognized that they were in trouble, so he took a stroll out onto the sea. He walked out to him, and one of the great lines of scripture, don't worry, it's just me. I'm telling you, you walk up to me on the sea, I'm worried, okay? But nevertheless, don't worry, it's just me walking on the water out here. And he comes up, and it says, why did they go through that storm? Because they did not consider the loaves and fishes, but their heart was hardened. In other words, they didn't remember what it meant to feel needy like those people, so God made them, put them right smack dab in the middle of a rocking boat where they had a need. And when they panicked, they realized what the people were like back on the shore that they had just left. Sometimes the only way God can get you to understand what you've done to somebody else is to make you them in another situation. So, you just grab somebody's heart and crush it, break up with them, walk away, and then you're going to go into a situation where it's going to happen to you and you're going to remember what you did to them. Interestingly enough, that's where Jacob is. Now, let's go to player number 3. Player number 3 is Rachel, who is the beautiful liar. She's in verse 16. Now, Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. By the way, Rachel means little lamb. And the younger daughter of Laban was beautiful, but she was also deceptive. How do I know that? Because I've already read Genesis 31, where when she was leaving the household, she left with some objects that belonged to her father and then lied about them. And later she died giving birth to Benjamin, and on a site that's near Bethlehem that's marked to this day. What we know about Rachel is that she was drop dead gorgeous and that she didn't always tell the truth. That's what we know about her. And by the way, she came from a family that didn't tell the truth for generations before her. So let's give her a little bit of a break. I mean, after all, she came by it naturally. The last player is the one I want you to focus on in verses 16 and 17. And the last player is Leah. And Leah is the word, actually it comes from the word for weary, the weary one, the tired one. This is, a candidate for Geritol or some kind of one-a-day vitamin. It says, Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful of form and face. I don't know if you know what that means, but that means she grew up in a house as the ugly older sister. She didn't have the wow appearance. Apparently, Leah's eyes were her problem. Because in the Bible, if you have brown eyes or dark eyes, you have strong character, but like me, if you have blue eyes, you're kind of sketchy. We're not sure about those blue-eyed ones. Blue-eyed girls were not desirable in Scripture because they had weak eyes. Now, they not only had weak eyes in the blue appearance, but I don't know if you know this, but people that have the certain colors in their eyes have more difficulty seeing in the bright desert sun. They actually, your eyes actually do react differently, and the color. That's why, Nordic peoples, people up in places where the UVB rays are much smaller, had lots more blue-eyed children. And when you get down, virtually 54 countries in Africa, none of them dominated by blue eyes. What does that tell you? Okay, it's a dark-eyed culture. So, darker complected skin, dark hair, dark eyes. Apparently when Leah walked in, she had light eyes. And so they considered her weak of eyes. It doesn't necessarily mean she was like, she's not blind. She can see fine. The problem is that her eyes are probably colored and weakly. It's kind of interesting because even in Jacob's start, what are the values of Jacob? How do you see in the story the values? By the way, if Rachel's the beautiful liar, let me give you a title for Leah. She's the brokenhearted one. And Jacob comes into it. Now, what about Jacob in verse 18 carries with you old values as opposed to new values? Yeah, I'll work for her. Now, appropriately, you would normally think the oldest daughter would be married off first, and that's the right thing. He's not just looking for a wife. Both Leah and Rachel qualify according to what he should marry, right? Both of them are of the right family. So it's not a question of one of them being out of bounds. It's a question of one of them being drop dead gorgeous. So Jacob still has enough of his old nature left that says, I really want not family order, and the honor of the family order, which he should have had, but he wants the younger. What's interesting to me is, think about what we're talking about. We're talking about the younger brother that supplanted the older, that now wants the younger sister instead of the older. Jacob still has a problem with family order. He doesn't understand the respect in the family order that goes with the position. So she should be married first, but Jacob wants to marry the younger one. Now, if the first part gives you the players, verses 18 to 30 give you the troubled deal. This is the deal that they go through, okay? Now, Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Laban said, it is better that I give to you. It is better that I give her to you than to give her to another man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Isn't that nice? Nice little romantic. 7 years of his life just to work to earn her. Ladies, can I just stop here and say, please, 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 just do this for me. If nothing else, do it for me. Make him work for you. Make him work for you. Please don't sell out too cheap. Don't do that. Do not decide. Listen, girls settle for guys that are way lower than they should settle for because they're more afraid to not have somebody than to have somebody that isn't worth having. If you want another child to raise, here's the problem. He's supposed to be a husband, not a child. And there's an awful lot of girls who marry a child who do not understand. The best behavior he's ever going to have is when he's dating you. If it's bad behavior then, it's going to get worse. Don't marry a guy and figure you'll train him. His mom's been working on it for 18 years and she hasn't got it, so what makes you think you're going to do it? Okay? Now, when we get down to it, it says, Laban gathered all the men of the place. I got to back up, I'm sorry. Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may go into her. Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. Now in the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and Jacob went into her. Laban also gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came about in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. So whatever happens here, Jacob does not know that's what's happening until it's happened. And he said to Laban, what is this that you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? But Laban said, it is not the practice in our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week with this one, and we will give you the other also for the service of which you shall serve me for yet another 7 years. Jacob did so, completed her week, and he gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. Jacob also gave him Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her maid. So Jacob went in to Rachel also, and indeed he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served with Laban for another 7 years. I want you to underline in verse 30, he loved Rachel more than Leah. Where did we see this problem in Genesis before?
With his parents.
Jacob grew up in a house where one was favored by the father and one was favored by the mother. Esau was favored by the father. Jacob was favored by the mother. Now he's got 2 wives and he favors one over the other. How did it work out in Jacob's life before? It was terrible. He is where he is, on the run from his brother who wants to kill him because of the outworkings of the favoritism that happened in his family before. My point is, favoritism never works. But there's something else. I want you, you have to excuse the language of this, because there's no way I can explain to you the biblical world without explaining to you the biblical world. The woman in the biblical context desperately wanted one thing in life, more than a marriage, more than anything else. What was the one thing she wanted? A child. She becomes part of something that is left behind on the planet by her having a child. To be childless she could live and die and never see her name in writing, never have a marker for her grave. There's nothing of her without a child. So she is desperate to have a child. So the 7 days of the wedding feast that are represented here, he is to go into her repeatedly to try and impregnate her, which is something that she wants to happen. Do you notice the way it reads? That he does this for her. That this is her desire. And it's not about sex, it's about babies. I mean, yes, it's about sex, but you understand what I mean. It's for the babies. This is not an entertainment. She's desperate to have the one thing in her life that will make her someone. Now I want you to think, ladies, I want you to put yourself in Leah's position. I want you to think, yes, he's with me every night for these 7 nights, but he's only doing this so he can get past this, so he can get the girl he really wants. Tell me how that makes you feel. What do you come away with? Who wants to be somebody's second? Who wants to be the runner-up? And here he is sleeping with her, and she's got to feel... Don't you think that night 2 felt worse than night 1? And night 3 felt worse than night 2? Don't you think it was like... By the end of this, I think she's got to have virtually no self-respect left. She's gonna do what? She's going to be all excited about life, and the one thing she really wanted in life should have had some joy to it. There's no joy in this. He has robbed her of her essential identity and taken away her joy. And ultimately, I think she's broken. Now, you understand the story, but how about the second wedding? How about the second wedding when Rachel gets married? How do you think Leah's feeling during that? How do you think Leah's feeling when it's obvious the weeks after the wedding that Rachel is the one that he loves and she is a spare part in the wheel of marriage? So the bottom line is favoritism that characterized his upbringing is now being repeated in the pattern of his wives. When you tell this story to young ladies, tell them that in the Bible there's a story of a woman who felt worthless. She wasn't worthless, she felt worthless. And the people of her life added to the feeling of her worthlessness. Was it fair? No. Did she do anything wrong? No. She had blue eyes, so sue her. What's she supposed to do about that? Some physical characteristic for which she had no control but was born with becomes this mark against her. What are you supposed to do about it? So your sister's prettier than you. What are you supposed to do about that? Who do you see about that? So you get to verses 31 to 35, and here's the heart of the matter. Here's the heart. I put a little heart right there next to it. Verse 31. Here's the phrase I want you to underline. Now the Lord saw that Leah was unloved. The Lord saw that Leah was unloved. He opened her womb, but Rachel or Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and bore a son and named him Reuven. Reuven means, look, a son. Because the Lord had seen my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. Then she conceived again, and she bore a son. Because the Lord has heard me, I am loved. Therefore, let me name this one Simeon. It means he has heard. She conceived again, and she bore a son and said, now this time my husband will become attached to me. I have borne him 3 sons, and she called him Levi. He shall attach himself. Attached. Levi. And then she conceived again and bore a son and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she named him Yehudah. Yehudah means praise, Judah. And then she stopped bearing. God saw that Leah was not being fairly treated, and so he stepped in and he did something. And I want you to see it. First, she has a child, And she thinks I will gain value by what God allows me to produce that's a benefit to my husband. Look, you have a son. This is the girl who feels worthless, who feels like she can now give him something, and now because of some substance fulfillment that she gives him, now he will love her. But then it happens again. And he doesn't love her after the first son. He still loves Rachel, but he still comes in and he gives her babies, which is his responsibility to her. So now she feels that God is listening, God is giving the, but here's the thing. I'm hoping that my husband will see 2 sons. Come on now. I got to be worth something to you. A third son comes along, and there's a dysfunctional idea that he's going to love me. Can you hear her voice? Please, somebody love me. Please, somebody love me. I just want somebody to love me. It's not until the 4th child that she gets it. On the 4th child, she says, I can't make him love me. So I'm going to take my fulfillment from God and praise him. I'm going to stop looking for love in all the wrong places. I'm going to turn it over and say, God, thank you for being my God. I need to find peace in my life, and obviously chasing after this guy isn't doing it. You know far too many people in life that are spending their life trying to chase somebody down so they can feel significant and loved. Do me a favor. Start off every relationship you're going to start with the knowledge that God loves you. And because he loves you, you do not have to earn the love of somebody else to become significant. There's nobody in this room that needs to do anything more than respond to God's love to have it. Okay? Stop thinking you're not pretty enough or handsome enough or strong enough or, okay, take showers. Do what you can do, okay? Try to stay clean. Clean is always good. Brush your teeth, because nobody likes people with broccoli in their teeth. But the bottom line, yeah, that's a graphic picture. But the bottom line is, beyond that, look, I think it's fine. You want to impress them, then you dress up, use makeup, that's fine. But you can't make somebody love you. You can't. Do you know how many times I've sat in my office with people who are sobbing because they thought they could make somebody love them? You don't want to be that pathetic person that's throwing themselves at the other person. Leah's story is every teen in high school that isn't part of the beautiful crowd knows her story. That's why I want you to use it. This is a powerful story to a young person. You know what's interesting is that the end of the story isn't sad. The end of the story isn't how she doesn't find love, but how she does. It's that she was looking in the wrong place. Your significance as a woman is never going to be in how a man feels about you. It's really not. Your significance as a woman is never going to be whether or not he desires you, because you need to ladies, you need to understand you're going to get older. Your body is going to change. You have a baby, it changes the shape of your body. You have a couple of them, it really changes the shape of your body. So the point is that you have to be able to go, I'm saying this because I'm the age of your parents. You cannot make it about how they make you feel. You have got to know who you are before the Lord, regardless of how they make you feel. I want to take you now to the end of chapter 21, the last part of chapter 21, and the first part, and basically all of 30, and it deals with the idea that our family relationships are a precious gift, and in many ways, relationships are designed to help us, but they don't fix us. You don't get fixed or completed by somebody else. Let me say it another way. In marriage mathematics, 2 halves don't make a whole. In marriage mathematics, 2 wholes make 1 couple. Don't marry half a person. Be a whole person, find a whole person. Because if you come into a relationship with a person who's dysfunctional, you will have a dysfunctional relationship. The truth of the matter is that there's a lot of people in our lives that are people users. And I want to take a few minutes and see if I can show you some symptoms of how you can pick out a people user. I want you to know who a user is versus a person who has genuine love. So let me give you 7 symptoms of people users, and the first one's going to come from 29, verse 21 to 26. 29, 21 to 26. The first symptom of a people user is they're a person who uses deceit to advance their agenda. They will lie to get what they want. If they use deceit to advance their agenda, run, don't walk to the nearest exit and get away. 21 says this, "And Jacob said to Laban, 'Give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may go into her.' Laban gathered all the men." Verse 23, in the evening he took his daughter Leah. Verse 24, gave her also the maid Zilpah. Verse 25, came out in the morning. Look, it was Leah. And he said, "Why have you deceived me?" Verse 26, it is not the practice in our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. Laban explains, listen, it's perfectly reasonable what I just did. I deceived you, but I had a good reason. That is not a person you want to spend a lot of time with. I lied, but it was only for your benefit. Yeah, not so much. The truth of the matter is that you shouldn't be allowed to walk around feeling okay about lying to me. Now, the second thing I want you to see is in verses 27 to 30. This is a second symptom of a people user. The first one is use of deceit to advance their agenda. The second one is creating false compromises. False compromises. This is the person who says, "I'll meet you halfway," but their half is bigger than your half. Okay? So, verse 27, "Complete the week, and we will give you the other also." Oh, yeah, that'll be 7 more years. Jacob did so, and he gave his daughter Rachel. Laban also, in verse 29, gave his maid Bilhah. Jacob went into Rachel also. He loved Rachel more than Leah. Look, Laban was again showing the trait of a profound people user. This is what he did. People users don't see the world as all on one level. They see their needs as a higher level than everybody else. When you're around a person who's a people user, they will see their needs as higher than everyone else in the room. It's more important that they get their needs met. They believe themselves to be more important. And their extreme selfishness blinds them to the unfairness of what they're doing. So they'll walk around and actually act like they're being fair when they're being unfair because they're blinded by their own self-importance. Let me give you a third one. The third one is in verses 31 to 35. People users. Seeing other people as their completion. Seeing other people as their completion. Now, I want to move now to Leah. And this, in a sense, Leah is a people user. And you go, wait a minute, I thought she was a victim. Well, yes, but she's literally also a people user. She's a sad woman that's been hurt by a world that saw her outer shell and judged her as less important. Could have been her weak eyes in 29:17, or some defect that made her life harder because she wasn't as beautiful as her sister. But here's the thing. The bottom line is that she felt that somebody else could fix her. And that's what I want you to see. No one else can fix you but God. So in verse 31, Lord saw that she was unloved, opened her womb, and then she starts having these babies all the way down to Judah, and there's your 4 babies. And you have to stop and ask yourself, what? There's an old adage, by the way, this is one you want to know this one. Hurt people, hurt people. Hurt people, hurt people. Broken people raise broken people. You need to recognize that children are a gift from the Lord. And they're not supposed to be used to try and bargain off to get your husband's love. You're a people user if you're using a child. Do you know where I see this most often? In divorce. I am amazed at how people throw around their children like a piece of meat. I had 3 children and they are dear to me, every single one. There are times when I could have killed them, but I'm telling you, they are dear to my heart. And there is no way that I could just use them as a weekend tool to wound their mother. I'm appalled at what people are doing. But I do know that broken people raise broken people. And I do know that God did not give her children to win over Jacob. Why did God give her 4 kids? To win her heart to him, not to Jacob. God's will is not to get some guy to love you in place of his relationship with you. Can we all agree with that? God's will is not to get some guy, ladies, to love you in the place of the relationship he wants to have with you. If God's objective is to have a relationship with you, and that's his chief objective, then the reason all 4 of those babies were given to her was to show her again and again and again, people may not love you, but I do. 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 And what she was doing was trying to use the first 3 children to win Jacob. It's interesting because by using them, she became an adult that was doing to her children exactly what was done to her. Do you see that? People were using her. Laban was using her, and she felt it. Now she was using her children to get her husband. Isn't it the same thing? You're going to become what you hate if you don't find your love in the right place. Chapter 30, verses 1 through 8. Let me give you a 4th one. Misplacing blame. People users misplace the blame. It's a very typical thing they do. They put the blame in the wrong place. Go to verse 1. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister. Circle the word jealous. Isn't this interesting? It's very clear who Jacob loved more. To everyone who's reading the story, to everyone who was living at the time of the story, except for one person. Who? Rachel. When you are jealous, it is clear to everyone else that you are special except you. And then it says, she became jealous and she said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." Okay, let's stop here at the end of verse 1. Can we all find the quick fallacy of her thinking? You did this to me. Now, here's the thing. She's asking him to do something he can't deliver on. Because sex doesn't make babies, God does. I know too many people have tried for too long and didn't have any. So the truth is, she's misplacing the blame on him when it's not his fault. It's not like he's not trying, it's like it's not working. And so then Jacob's anger burned against Rachel, and she said, "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" She said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go in with her that she may bear on my knees, that through her I too may have children." So she gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife. Jacob went into her. That's perfectly legal under the law. And the baby is born, and she actually is there at the birth of the baby. Babies were often birthed more or less in a standing or squatting position, and it was done completely differently than it's done in the modern period, and then placed on the knee of the mother. The actual mother she's a maid, so she's not the mother. The mother is the actual wife. And so this is what Rachel plans. Bilhah conceived, bore Jacob a son. Rachel said, "God has vindicated me and has indeed heard my voice and has given me a son." Therefore she named him Dan. Now, Dan is judge. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. So Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed." And she named him Naphtali. Naphtali is a type of wrestling, a type of contending. It's a word of contention. She named his name Naphtali. Rachel got into people using and into the same act of people using along with everybody else, but her way of doing it's a little different. Her value system is obviously off the level. Give me children or else I die. It's hard to feel sorry for Rachel when she was always the beautiful one. It's hard to feel sorry for her when he obviously loved her more than he loved Leah. I can feel sorry for Leah. I'm having a hard time working up feeling sorry for Rachel. She's the beauty pageant queen. Like, oh, sorry, you were the homecoming queen, how tough for you. But the truth of the matter is, in the one area that she had framed her own identity, it didn't matter if she was more beautiful. It didn't matter if he loved her more. It mattered that her sister was having babies and she was not having babies. And honestly, the motivation wasn't even a nurturing one. The reason she wanted to have babies was for her. So Rachel suffered from having an inordinate attention paid to her as a child. Let me say it this way. Sometimes the pretty girl is the one that had everybody paying attention to her, and that can be its own problem. Anybody have like a really close friend that was like the beautiful girl of the school? Anybody like that? Guys or girls, I got to tell you, people that are used to having everybody take care of them because of externals don't develop the internals. Let me tell you where this works in basketball. The young man who, out of some mystery, just has the ability to put a ball inside the hoop no matter what he does. He can manage to move his way down the court. So what do? We move him from high school right through college, dump him into professional sports. We laud on him hundreds of thousands of dollars. Girls throw themselves at him. And then he ends up being a failure morally. And we wonder why. As if we took any time at all, he had the grand wonder of the ability to throw a ball in a bucket. Therefore, he was worth millions. Teachers in this country aren't, but he was. Social workers in this country can barely make a living, but if you can throw a ball into a bucket, we'll make you a millionaire. Now, something's wrong with the system that places blame on people that don't develop the inner when we dump them all the way at the top of the line. Let me say this. The verses 9 to 14, this is the fifth one. This is people that draw others into their misshapen value system. People that draw other people into their misshapen value system. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, "How fortunate!" So she used the word fortune, which is Gad, named him Gad. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. And Leah said, "Happy am I!" So she called his name Happy, Asher. Now, in the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. There is just no way to describe this, but just describe it. Mandrakes are a kind of root, and the root looks like this. It looks like two spread open legs. So they thought it was an aphrodisiac. There's no other way to tell you the story but to just tell you the story, okay? So he's running around looking for aphrodisiacs in the field, looking for Viagra at the local pharmacy, and brought them to his mother Leah. And Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." And they're now going to argue about who gets the Viagra. Okay? I know this is like really earthy stuff, but the reality here is Leah celebrated each addition to her brood. Her children grew up just as children do, measuring values according to the pattern of her parents. Look at this girl's value. She valued children for how they made her feel, not who they were. Look, the bottom line here is people users are people that cannot see intrinsic value in themselves. They gain value through relationships with other people. That's why they use them. And the last one, that's not the last one, the sixth one is verses 15 to 24. People users surrender moral values for self. Surrender moral values for self, or selfish pursuits. Listen to what it says. But she said to her, "Is it a small matter for you to take my husband? Would you take my son's mandrakes also?" Now it's interesting. They're each calling him theirs, okay? You got to really wonder what Jacob was all about. You really got to wonder if he's like walking around, like walking through the tent going, "Ay, you know, he's my husband. Now he's my husband." You got 4 ladies, okay? I'm exhausted just thinking about this. I mean, the guy can't even bring home flowers. He's got to bring home 4 bunches. You try carrying 4 bunches of flowers. Okay, so here it is. It says, when Jacob came in from the field in the evening, then Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." Okay? Circle the word hired. Okay? So this man is like baby maker for hire. Did you notice that nobody's like doing this particularly for love of Jacob? Did anybody notice that? Honestly, this is like a reversal. This is a bunch of women using this guy to get something they want. And so he lay with her that night. Now, Jacob's only happy enough to be directed to whichever tent he's going to. He's just saying yes, because Jacob's life is all about, okay. So, verse 17, God gave heed to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a 5th son. Leah has said, God has given me my wages because I gave my maid to my husband. So she named him Issachar, which is, of course, the word for wages. Now, the thing you have to understand about her, she's thinking, God's paying me off now with another child. That's how she looks at this. Leah conceived again and born a 6th son to Jacob. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good gift. Now my husband will dwell with me because I have borne him 6 sons. So the word Zebulun is a trickier word. We're going to use the word wage or payment, but that's not the best way to translate the word. It comes from a really funny construction. I'm not sure how I can. Zebul is like a lofty place. Zebulun is like a place that is built up or esteemed, but it's done. This is like, I've borne him 6 sons, and I've given him this esteemed, built up, proper place. I'm not going to say this well. Afterwards, she bore him a daughter and named her Dinah. Now, Dinah is, she's going to come up later in the story, and that's the feminine form of Dan. It's the feminine form of Judge. But God remembered Rachel, and God gave heed to her opened womb, and so she conceived and bore a son. God has taken away my reproach, and she named him Yosef. Yosef is he increases me. God increases me. May the Lord give me another son. It's interesting because these 2 women seem to be so much about themselves. Am I missing it, or do you feel tenderness toward the children between the mothers and the children?
No.
I'm thinking they're thinking like baby factories here. They're looking at themselves as if it's like an arms race. Now we're going to have a baby race. Well, you can have one, then I'll have one, then you have one, but then I can have one. Yeah, well, mine will run faster. That's okay. I'll have another one. I'll have a daughter. Ha! And it's like, honestly, they're spitting them out like those little Play-Doh things. I mean, come on. Look at verse 24, because here's the 7th one. People users have a constant need for more. They have a constant need for more. Yosef means he will increase. And honestly, it's the statement, I want more. I want more. I want more. Rachel continued to seek the Lord for more and more and more. The person who believes that they're completed by somebody else can never get enough. The person who's jealous will always find something that they don't possess. Both have a constant need for another dip in the well just to feel successful. What I'm trying to get you to see is that you can't get somebody else to fix you. You need to be able to stand in your identity. And people who don't feel whole use other people. And that's the classic thing they do.